Washington Tech Policy Podcast, episode number 2.
Moving the needle. Welcome to the Washington Tech Policy Podcast.
Curating communications, media, and tech policy news so you don't have to. News, interviews, everything you need without the axe to grind. It's the Washington Tech Policy Podcast with Joe Miller.
The DOJ drops espionage charges against a Temple professor. The U.S. and EU agree to share data, and the FCC establishes a hot clock for Charter and Time Warner Cable. The House passed legislation last Tuesday entitled the E-Warranty Act, which would allow electronic device makers to issue warranty information electronically. Currently, device makers are required to issue warranty information via print. Of the 309 representatives who voted, just 2 opposed: Michigan Republican Representative Dr. Dan Benishek and North Carolina Republican Walter Jones, Jr. The next step is President Obama's desk for signature. The Justice Department has dropped its economic espionage charges against Temple University professor and physics department chair Chi Ching. Chi was originally charged with wire fraud and attempting to share competitive information about a semiconductor company with China. The U.S. and EU have agreed to a data sharing agreement despite a strained relationship following the Ed Snowden leaks. Under the agreement, EU citizens would have the right to sue in the U.S. if their personal data is misused. But Congress would have to pass a law first, and the Judicial Redress Act, co-sponsored by Connecticut Republican Chris Murphy and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Republican Orrin Hatch, seeks to do just that. The FCC has established its shot clock for its review of the Charter-Time Warner Cable merger. Comments are due October 13th. Reply comments are due on November 2nd. The FCC is coming down on Lyft, the car-sharing service, for its robocalls. Users are currently unable to use Lyft's services without giving automatic consent to receive robocalls. The FCC warned Lyft that the policy violates the Telephone Consumer Protection Act because there is no genuine opt-out. The FAA is supposed to pass regulations by September 30th, which would pave the way for commercial drone use, but it looks like the agency is going to miss the deadline. And at a House Judiciary Committee subcommittee hearing last Thursday, California Republican Representative Darrell Issa said the FAA's delay is a punt. New York Democratic Representative Jerry Nadler said addressing the safety of drones will take time, as will the appropriate distinction between the FCC's authority to regulate drone transmissions and the FAA's authority to regulate airspace. Jesse Jackson Sr. is expanding his efforts to improve diversity and inclusion in the tech sector by focusing now on so-called unicorn startups, those worth $1 billion or more. Few of these companies have released their diversity statistics. Tech and auto companies have come together with a proposal to share the 5.9 gigahertz band. The FCC would bear the burden of addressing any signal interference. At an American Enterprise Institute event, FCC Republican Commissioner Ajit Pai said the FCC's net neutrality order has reduced investment in telecom. I'm pleased to have on the show Adriana Waterston, Senior Vice President, Insights and Strategy at Horowitz Research. Adriana is a research junkie with a flair for finding the story behind the statistics, teasing the meaning out of the measurement, and revealing the faces behind the facts. A seasoned quantitative and qualitative market researcher with expertise on consumers and their attitudes towards their media tools, Adriana has moderated hundreds of groups and conducted in-home ethnographic research on a bevy of topics, ranging from advertising and marketing effectiveness, media and entertainment consumption, unmet needs in technology and media, pricing and packaging, travel, customer service satisfaction, lifestyles and family dynamics, and brand corporate image. Adriana oversees all of Horowitz's millennial, multicultural, and Latino research endeavors. Well known for her leadership in this space, Adriana is often quoted in the press and is a frequent speaker at industry events and conferences. She is also the lead organizer and co-host of the annual Cultural Insights Forum, a New York City event that draws on a crowd of over 350 media and advertising executives. Adriana has been named one of the industry's most influential minorities in cable by Cablefax magazine and has received a CTAM-TAMI award for her work in multicultural marketing. She co-authored The Practical Guide to Multicultural Marketing, which won the Bronze Global eBook Awards in the multicultural nonfiction category in 2013. Born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, Adriana is a graduate of Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts, and the proud mother of a bilingual third grader. I'm so proud to have Adriana on the show. Let's transition to the interview. And no one knows this, but this is actually our second take because the first take was horrible. My digital recorder broke down. Editing was a problem, and you've been gracious enough to come back on. I really, truly appreciate that.
No problem. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, Adriana, let's get started. And let's find out a little bit more about you. How did you get involved in research? What interested you in the media industry from the outset? What made you start on this path of becoming an expert in media research?
Well, my path was, I would say, less of a traditional one. I came into research through sales and marketing, and I wanted to change and was always interested in television and production and theater and all of that exciting media stuff. And what happened was that I actually fell in love with research. I discovered research by accident and have been passionate about it ever since. And it's been 15 years now. Did
you like sales and marketing? I did it too. I did it on the ad sales side years ago, and I wasn't crazy about it. Did you like it?
I like dealing with people. I like talking to people. I like understanding how I can meet their needs. So I was very effective at sales and marketing, and I appreciate its role in the world of business, particularly. But I find that those same skills are what we use for research as well. To draw insights and information out of people, it really requires that same skill set. Yeah, I appreciate the skill set. Let's put it that way. I'm glad that I'm not, hustling for a living.
So we're here today because we want to talk about TV universe segmentation. So what does that mean? How the audience is segmented. But before we start, you actually have a great video on your site, on the Horowitz website. And the reason I like this video is because it really tells the story of these different segments that your research has found. I'm going to actually play that, and I'm going to actually post it up on the site. But let me play it here now so our listeners can hear what these different audience members sound like. So here we go.
This is Viewing the Viewer, the ethnographic videography that brings you inside consumers' homes to see and understand shifting attitudes and behaviors around TV and broadband content, services, and technologies. This year's Viewing the Viewer explores the 6 segments of the new TV universe, Horowitz's proprietary segmentation of TV households. Of particular interest are the 3 new TV behavior segments, those people on the leading edge of streaming and OTT. The modern multichannels are today's most valuable customers. They are among the heaviest of TV watchers, and they spend the most on telecom and entertainment. They juggle it all to keep up with all the content they love, so they use DVR, VOD, DVDs, streaming, OTT, you name it, with less of their viewing being live. They are young and among the most diverse of all the segments.
Within the last few years, it's gotten a lot easier to build TV and content around your schedule as opposed to building your schedule around, all right, well, I gotta be home at 8 o'clock as it starts. I mean, there's really only a couple of shows that I stop everything for, and it's like, I have to be here. This is when it comes out. This is when I want to see it.
The Modern Families segment is also among the most diverse. For them, busy lives and schedules translate to less time to watch TV and a split between live TV and streaming.
TV is like, I don't know, it's like food, I feel like. TV is just like always on somewhere, right? I mean, now the kids watch TV. I have Nick Jr. on our Disney Channel most of the day, always.
The untethered curators include cord cutters, cord shavers, and cord nevers. as well as multi-channel subscribers who just find streaming more convenient and appealing.
When we moved in, it was just kind of a foregone conclusion that you move in, you sign up for your utilities, you sign up for cable, and that's kind of the whole thing. And it's definitely changed now that I'm willing to consider just not having a cable. I'd definitely sign up for internet still, but the cable's more of an actual decision.
Of the 3 segments of old TV behaviors you will meet, traditional curators have adopted time-shifting behaviors through VOD and DVR, but their OTT and streaming is still rather limited.
We would never get rid of our TV service, I don't think. My husband, they like the live sports stuff. And I like watching the local news. I like to watch it. I mean, you can go back, I guess, and watch it on the internet, but for some reason I like watching the news live.
Spectators are your lean-back live TV viewer, Gen Xers and baby boomers who are big TV fans and big multi-channel subscribers.
I may watch a few of the shows live that are coming on, that I know they're coming on. I know I'm here. But if I just sit down sometimes, I might flip around and see if there's anything new.
We have a smart TV, but I probably don't know how to use half of it. And so I just need whatever the technology is to be simplified enough where the average person could just use it.
And finally, you have the old schoolers, your typical older consumer with lower incomes and less of an inclination towards technology. They also don't happen to be very heavy TV viewers.
I don't watch a lot of TV. I recently got a gift and bought myself this TV, which is a Samsung something or another. So it was a delicate balance, between knowing how to do it and not overindulging. And I want to be in the middle, but I don't want to be a complete ignoramus.
So, Adriana, you've been doing this study and this report for the past several years. Can you tell us a little bit about what started the ball rolling on this?
Well, we've been surveying consumers and their attitudes towards media, content, services, and technology for years and years and years. That's what Horowitz Research does. In fact, this isn't the first major segmentation that we've done. My boss, Howard Horowitz, was in charge of basically the first segmentation of the television universe back in the day when they were still trying to identify an opportunity for cable television. And they were asking the question back then, this is in the 1980s, who would pay for television when television was free? And the results of that segmentation were what led directly to the creation of television networks, niche television networks like Discovery and MTV and what we know as cable television today. So that it really took a look at what are the different kinds of consumers, what are their interests and attitudes towards, at the time, entertainment content when we were living in really a broadcast universe. So segmentation has always been a part of what we do at Horowitz, but given all of the changes in the marketplace and how rapidly the marketplace is evolving from a consumer standpoint, a demographic standpoint, and a technology standpoint, we felt that the time was right for another major segmentation. So we've been doing this survey for many, many years. I think the State of Cable and Digital Media Study is in its something like 25th year. But we finally decided to do a formal segmentation of the data, which is what led to those segments that were in the video, that were recapped in the video. And, it's important to note that segmentation is really a snapshot in time. So this segmentation is ever-changing just as much as our media world and the options that consumers have in the media landscape are evolving.
So now the 2015 version of the study, there are several different segments that you discuss here. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, sure. So, the big key takeaway is that when we did this formal segmentation, we used a couple of criteria, which is the way you do segmentation, some major pieces of data that go into this analysis and allow you to come out with these segments, which is really people on a continuum based on some of these criteria. So in this case, it was, we used whether or not they're using a lot of streaming versus watching a lot of television live, what kind of platforms and devices they are using to consume that content, how into television they are, sort of a kind of an attitudinal question, and how much television content they consume, regardless of the platform. There are a few other variables that also went into the segmentation, but those were the main ones. And when we look at how the segments come out, we find that there were 6 big segments. Of course, we could always sub-segment those even further, but there are 6 key segments. And 3 of them really fall on what we might call the traditional television side or the old TV side. People who are still consuming television in very traditional ways, whether it's through, live television or even through VOD or DVR, which today's day and age seems like old technology compared to the streaming services that we have now and the mobile services. And then 3 segments that really fall on the more cutting edge or leading edge side of the segmentation. And those are people that have really adopted streaming services, mobile, as core to their viewing behaviors. That doesn't necessarily mean exclusively so. They're still watching some live TV, and some segments are doing DVR and VOD as well, but they've really adopted streaming as part of their everyday behaviors. So that's the big thinking behind the segmentation.
And you have the curators, the spectators, the old schoolers, the modern multi-channels, the modern streamers, the untethered curators.
Right. So the modern multi-channels, the modern streamers, and the untethered curators are the newer segments. And they're really quite fascinating. First of all, very much in flux. The percentage of people that fall into those new categories grew from 31% in 2014 to 34% in 2015. So it's only a 3% growth, but it's over 1 year. So it just is a sign of things to come. And, what we find most interesting are the 2 segments, the modern multi-channels and the modern streamers, because the untethered curators, we call them untethered for a reason. They're untethered quite literally in that many of the cord cutters and cord shavers fall into that category, though not exclusively so. But the word untethered really refers also to an attitudinal perspective towards television, where those folks are just less interested. They're less into it. So we don't think they're unimportant, but we find the other 2 segments much more interesting because they are very into television content. They care very much about keeping up with their shows and consuming a wide variety of genres and things like that. And so they're really in the market for television content on whatever platform they can get it. And that holds true especially for the modern multi-channels, who really just use every platform imaginable: live, VOD, DVR, streaming, mobile, you name it. They're using all of those platforms because they actually have such a wide variety of genres, a long list of shows they're following and things they want to binge and all of that. And so, in order to keep up with all of that, they have to use all of these technologies. So it's great. They're great customers for television content and television services.
Curators are baby boomers and Xers who split most of their time between TV, live TV, and then like DVRs and video on demand and things like that. So they don't even really get into streaming that much, right? And then you have the spectators who lean back. These are the channel surfers who spend nearly all their time watching time with live TV. So these are like the sports people, right?
Right.
And then you have the old schoolers who are, 50 plus viewers who watch almost exclusively live TV. They have a lower income and they're less tech oriented.
Right. And they're also very much less into television. I mean, these are people that just basically watch news, maybe they watch Judge Judy, maybe, they're not heavy viewers actually. The traditional curators and the spectators are much heavier viewers than the old schoolers when you're looking at those old categories or the old TV categories.
And what about people who don't really watch live TV or any really type of TV because they do other things, like maybe they're higher income and they go to the opera more often, they go to the theater. Where would they fall on in these?
Well, in this spectrum, they would fall. First of all, everybody in the study has to be a television content viewer to some extent. If they don't qualify as a television content viewer, meaning they don't watch at least a little bit of television every week, then they weren't in the study. So there are some people that probably wouldn't even fall into this universe because it's the TV universe after all. So that was a major qualifier for the study. They have to be television content viewers to some degree. But as I said earlier, the old schoolers on the one side and the untethered curators on the other side are sort of the least interested in television and consume the least amount of content.
And then you have the modern multi-channels, which are young, 44%, 18 to 34. They're high income, most tech-oriented segment with high multi-channel penetration, most viewing via DVR, VOD, along with an increasing use of over-the-top OTT content.
Right.
And then the modern streamers are 18 to 34. They use streaming options over DVR and VOD. So I'm trying to figure out which category I fit into. Because,
well, what do you think?
I'm like in denial that I'm an Xer. So, like I always say, I'm on like the I always
it's
say
more
I'm
about
on
the attitudes. Don't worry about the demographics, because the demographics are just, that's sort of the typical person in that category, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people, on the fringes one way or the other. I mean, so it really look at it more from a behavioral standpoint and the kinds of services that you use, and that'll tell you where you fall.
Well, I don't know which one I am. Which one are you? Do you?
It's interesting. I would have said that I'm a modern multi-channel. I subscribe to cable. I pay a lot of money for cable. I have 2 DVRs, and I pay for I have my premium channels as part of my package. I have all of that, and I use all of it, but I also do a lot of streaming, so I would have thought that I was in the modern multi-channel category. But interestingly enough, as my daughter's at summer camp this summer, and observing my behaviors, I actually think that I have shifted into the untethered curator category, because I'm really watching a lot less TV now that she's not around. And, the little that I watch, I stream. I've been binge watching the new season of Orange is the New Black. I've been binge watching Sons of Anarchy because I finally, gave in. Everybody in my office was talking about it while it was still on, and now that it's over, I've had to do that. So I'm really using streaming to be able to really curate my content, but watching very little else. And I think the point about my daughter being away is actually a very important point about this whole story. One of the things that we've learned through this segmentation and through other research we've done is that life stage and the presence of children in the home and multi-generational households really plays a very big part in dictating how that household consumes television and the different platforms and services that they use. So that those modern multi-channel households and also the traditional curator households very much tend to be, and even the modern streamers tend to be family households. They're using all of these different platforms and services to be able to not only keep up with their own personal demands and interests, but also to serve the needs of busy and diverse household with lots of people with different viewing interests and habits.
Well, I think I have to say that I'm modern streamers, although we are a family household. So I have to say I'm modern streamers, but because untethered just seems like too much work. Mm-hmm. Like you have to go out and buy the antenna, and who knows what you have to put it in the attic. I don't know. I'm not doing that.
Right. Well, some of the folks in the untethered curator category do have cable. It's just that they don't spend as much time watching it, and they spend most of their time streaming.
So, but what are broadcasters going to do? I mean, are they going to have to rely on sports? Because I saw a study the other day saying that the people using television number, the PUT, P-U-T, is how Nielsen refers to it, it's gone down except for sports. Who's gonna buy advertising anymore with niche markets opening up, and what are they going to do?
Sure. Well, that is the $64,000 question in the industry, and the answer lies in the industry really getting together and figuring out how to measure and monetize all of these platforms. One of the biggest, issues that we have in the media industry, and of course, it all has to do with ad sales, is how do we value? First of all, how do we measure? How do we know that, Adriana watched an episode of, let's say, The Good Wife, live when it aired, and then the next week I wasn't home to watch that, so I streamed it off of the ABC, website. Or maybe I started watching the episode live and then couldn't finish it, so now I'm watching it now streamed. So do I count as 2 views, 1 view? There's all of those issues. And then how do we value the different platforms? Like, is the viewing experience and, of course, the consumption of advertising the same when I'm watching it on a big screen live the day it airs? And is my experience of advertising and my receptivity to it different when I'm watching on a mobile device or when I'm watching on my laptop? And then, of course, the issue of, being able to figure out, how to monetize content that's, weeks or months old. Nowadays, people are really into this idea of binge watching, and people say to us, we don't want to, I'm not going to start the new season of such and such a show until I can catch up with the past 2 seasons that I've been meaning to watch.
Right.
And so, how does that network and its advertisers monetize that content and figure out kind of how to make all of this work? And so, what are the broadcasters and all the networks? I mean, the ad-supported cable networks are in the same situation. What are they going to do? I mean, I think that as an industry, we really need to get together and answer those questions first, and really decide that there is some common language, some common currency that we can use. I mean, that's what Nielsen ratings are, but Nielsen ratings now just don't cover all of the permutations and possibilities. But I think that that's really the issue. I mean, we're not going to be able to stem the tide. It's not about, we've got to figure out how to keep people watching live. That's not going to happen. People's behaviors have shifted. I'm sure you've seen, and people say this to us all the time, where it's like, this is the golden age of television. I really believe that. I think that what all of this curation is doing is actually creating demand for better quality content. People don't have to waste their time watching crap on television when they have so many options and sources. I also think another fabulous opportunity is the fact that we can really personalize our advertising and messaging to the viewer. From a consumer standpoint, I know that there are all these privacy issues and concerns, but in the end, when we talk to consumers about, how does it feel when there's an ad for something that's clearly something that you searched on Google, and now you're seeing an ad for it in an ad in a streaming video that you are watching or on your Facebook page, and consumers express a little bit of nervousness about it, but actually they like it because they understand that advertising is the way that they're going to find out about new content, new services, new goods that they want to buy. So it becomes a vehicle for them to be able to get that information much more directly.
Yeah, I don't even know if this can even be considered convergence. I mean, you hear that said a lot. This is convergence, media convergence. But these over the top, they're disrupting the entire marketplace. They're not only disrupting the marketplace from the perspective of consumers, they're also disrupting the marketplace in terms of market entry barriers for people who want to start their own channels, not necessarily Netflix, but people who want to start their own YouTube channel or something like that. For almost 100 years, 9 decades, there's been this back and forth between the FCC and broadcasters trying to get media diversity. And still, to this day, we only have minority and women-owned stations in the single digits. Really, this is not convergence at all. This is a whole different ballgame. Would you agree with that statement?
To an extent, I do. I mean, I absolutely think that the New World Order does provide opportunities for creators to reach and build audiences in ways that they never could before. I mean, where there was a major barrier to entry. That is true. At the same time, we are in an environment where, the amount of content that's out there is just so vast. And how do you, as a new artist or a new creator or a new storyteller, find your audience? I think that's really the question. You can create the content and you can distribute it, but how are you going to build that audience? How are you going to leverage all of the touch points that you have to do that? And I think certainly it's there. The opportunity is there, but it's still not, an easy automatic proposition.
Adriana, I saw in your bio that you've also done some work on qualitative, and part of that has to do with what the viewers are actually buying at the end of the day. What are you seeing in terms of trends along the lines of what at the end of the day, what they actually purchase? Are there differences between the different segments?
That's a little bit outside of what we do. That actually is not part of what we address in our research, but I will tell you that, everybody is represented in this segmentation. So there are car buyers and luxury buyers and bargain buyers and Walmart shoppers in every single one of these categories. The question is really to figure out, based on who you are and what you're selling, what the right platform is going to be to reach that consumer in that environment. So it's a little bit outside of really what we cover in our research. However, I do want to say something I think is very important. We talked about the segmentation, and we talked about how in our new segmentation, 34% of folks in the 2015 study fell into the new viewing categories. The thing that we need to keep in mind is that that's among television content viewers overall, adult head of household television content viewers. When we look at that same data among young people, millennials, 18 to 34-year-old adults, the story completely shifts. And in that scenario, a third of millennials pretty much remain in the old television viewing categories, and literally the other two-thirds are in the new viewer categories. And what that tells you is that all of this whole conversation that we've been having about how to monetize and how to reach and how to build audiences and how to maintain value and how to sell to and how to know what channels to use to market a message and all of those things, these are not issues for a small segment of the population. When you're looking at the future of America, the future heads of households, current and future heads of households, it is right now, and that's why we can't really find millennials in the Nielsen ratings anymore. And where is that elusive millennial that doesn't watch television? They are watching. They are just not watching it in a way that's really being measured accurately. And so that, to me, is really the big conversation that needs to be had. That these new viewing behaviors, really are the template for the future and the current experience of millennials and all younger generations in America today.
That is so insightful. Adriana, we'll end here. Are there any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
I think the final thought that I always like to remind people about is that when you're talking about millennials, you are talking about America's multicultural audiences. And so not only is the real conversation about the future of America about multi-platform and new ways of reaching consumers on these different platforms and millennials and how to reach them, but it's also understanding how diversity and multiculturalism and being able to resonate with folks on a cultural level, how that plays a role in all of that stuff that we just talked about. And that is the subject for a whole nother podcast, but one of my favorite topics.
You've been listening to Adriana Waterston, who's the Senior Vice President, Insights and Strategy for Horowitz Research. And we've been discussing the new TV universe segmentation, the 2015 report, which you can find on horowitzresearch.com. Adriana, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. I look forward to any other time you need us.
And there you have episode number 2 with Adriana Waterston. All of these brilliant, brilliant people coming on my show. Amazing. How am I doing? Am I settling in? Am I starting to be a little more animated, a little more comfortable behind the mic? I hope so. I hope so. We'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, email me, jmiller@washingtech.com. Tell me what you think. What do you like? What don't you like? Don't worry, I won't hold it against you. You can even create an anonymous email address, but I really want to know what you think. Okay? All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Washing Tech Policy Podcast. You've been briefed.